You are listening to And If Love Remains, a unique show spotlighting people, ideas, science, culture, and art. Your host, Mike Lovett.
Rachel, thank you so much for that introduction. Elias Axel Petterson is back in the house. How you doing, Elias?
Hey, Mike, how's it going? I love that intro. That's really cool.
Thanks. It is fun and it's great. You know, I'm really lucky to have my daughter part of a show, even when it's
It's great. It's awesome.
When she's doing that. But I'm really excited to have you back, have us back together, talking some music, talking some piano, and
it's been a while.
It has been. We took a little break for the summer, but it's great to be back. And let's for a second, let's just mention a couple of exciting things that happened this summer. We had a couple of piano festivals. We had you sponsored and put together your own piano festival in Albuquerque, and then you were also part of a big piano festival here in Phoenix with API. Just briefly, why don't you just touch on those two events and kind of how they went?
Sure. It's great to be back. We have lots to talk about, and we have a really cool lineup this year, at least from the musical perspective. And I know you've got a lot of good guests coming on as well. So, you said mention briefly or talk about it briefly. It's hard to speak briefly about
right.
Summer festivals.
Well, it is a podcast, so you don't have to be too brief.
That's true. I guess I'll go in order. And certainly Arizona Piano Institute, API, which is here in town, we'll kind of retract some stuff, or what am I trying to say? We'll go around again and talk about it, because I definitely want to talk about it from a competitions perspective, and running the competition there a couple years ago online, and what we might be doing in the future. So I'll just give a brief rundown. For those of you who aren't aware, Arizona hosts a wonderful Piano Institute, or we do. It's called API, Arizona Piano Institute, and it's a very small board of directors. We're all volunteers, and we just really enjoy putting together this festival. It occurs every summer, usually the first full week of June, basically. And it's basically getting a lot of kids together up till age 18 now. We did have some college people in the past, and we might reintroduce that at some point. But it's mostly geared towards the pre-collegiate students from about age 9 or 10 to about 18 at a certain level and above. And we get about 30 to 40 students or so, roughly, that are broken into groups, and then they go around with their group and play in master classes for the guest artists and for teachers that we've got. And a master class is basically sort of a public private lesson. So when you have a private lesson with a teacher, it's a one-on-one experience. You're getting some really good insights into the music. Well, this is just in front of your peers, your classmates in that group, and some auditors that come as well. We do have quite a few auditors. So it's great to put that festival on. We do, the entire
and you really
year
have
we're basically planning.
Yeah, and you've had some top-notch world class musicians and instructors at that event every year.
Yeah, we've brought in a lot of great people. I mean, we have our perennial people from in town who they're all retired professors, basically, from big schools. And so we've got, Diane Baker and Professor Zellheim he taught at ASU. He's a professor emeritus from ASU, and she taught in Utah for a number of years. And then we've got Elizabeth Berdonov, who taught for many, I think 3 decades or so at the University of Cincinnati Conservatory. And she joins us every summer. And then we bring in a guest artist from outside, usually from a fairly big name school. So we've brought, I'm trying to think, Nolita True came here a couple times from Eastman. Norman Krieger came here when he was at USC. Now he's at IU. Yuri Kot actually came here all the way from Ukraine, from the Kiev Conservatory. And then we had Pavlina Dokovska from Manis. And this last year we had Alan Chow from Eastman. And we'll see who we have next year. We're always excited to see who we can bring. So,
yeah. talk about the caliber of the pianists that go there. I mean,
Well,
I remember when I went there and volunteered and was a part of it. I was very impressed with a lot of the students that were participating.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you actually had a couple students come and we really loved having you there as a volunteer. It was great. We get some really good students, some that are, this might be their first piano festival that they've gone to. So they're kind of breaking into that world and seeing what's out there. They might be really good in their studio, or they practice a lot at home, and, in their family, they're pretty good, but then they get to see, okay, this is sort of the cream of the crop in Arizona. And we've had people come from out of state as well. So the level gets quite high, and there are some really wonderful people. But what I really like about it is that the camaraderie is just incredible, and everybody's very supportive. It's a really non-competitive atmosphere. So there's no competition there. It's just we're all here to make music and hear each other and learn from each other. And I really like to see that a lot.
One other person, and it was a little bit of an unusual choice, I think, for a mostly classical oriented piano festival. But this year you also had oh my gosh, I blanked on his name.
Mike Coker. I forgot to say,
Mike Coker, who's an amazing pianist.
Yeah, he's a jazz pianist
out of ASU.
Yeah, he's a professor at ASU. Wonderful man to work with. Very, very congenial and just easygoing. And, he plays some wonderful music. And we decided this year to have more of an emphasis on something else. And so he gave workshops every day. And he was, one of the faculty members. And he provided the kids with some great ideas of just how to improvise. A lot of these kids were, and me included, I went to some of his sessions to watch, we're used to just playing the notes on the page that we see. We're raised in that tradition. We're not raised in an improvisatory tradition. In fact, I get very scared to improvise and just, make up something on the spot. And so he really opened up, I think, a lot of doors for people, and they saw, oh, this is something I can try and I can do and succeed at. So that was a great addition this year. And we're hoping to capitalize and maybe do something like that in the future as well.
That'd be fun. And I think it also adds a little, a little difference, sets you apart a little bit in a way. I don't think a lot of traditional places do that.
No. And I mean, this is the only festival of its kind in the entire Southwest. And,
right.
And we always talk about each year, okay, what kind of value are we offering to Arizona residents? Because we do want to increase the abilities and the opportunities of students here. The only thing that they can often do is go to California to some extremely expensive festivals, or go to the East Coast. There are quite a few.
Again, very expensive.
And they're very expensive. There are a couple famous ones. There's one in Colorado at Aspen, which first of all is very tough to get into, and it's also extremely expensive. So we first of all keep our costs very low, including this year with the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what the amount of value that they get from it, taking lessons from some of these teachers and just being around music for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and all the classes that they get and all the lectures and the, workshops and things. And it's just a great opportunity. And it's right here at home. So it's very close. It doesn't matter where you live. If we do have some people come from Flagstaff and Tucson, but if you're in the Phoenix area, this is just a wonderful place.
And then one other thing that we will come back to, because this is what kind of be the meat of our subject, is you guys do have or sponsor a piano competition. I think this year, wasn't it specifically a concerto competition?
So we did. We tried to introduce a concerto competition in our, let's see if I can remember, our fourth or fifth season. And we did it sort of in conjunction with the summer festival. So it was around the same time. And it was very successful. We didn't have a huge turnout because it was our first time, and we kind of put a lot of limiting parameters on it just to see how it would run. And it was great. The winners from that played with the PYS, Phoenix Youth Symphony, and then also with Musica Nova. That's a professional orchestra in the Valley. And so that was a lot of fun to put together. And at that time, I was helping to put all that together and get the judges ready. And so I kind of took on the role then and subsequently of competitions director. And the year after, basically during the pandemic, we put on an online competition. And at first it was, I guess we'll get into some of the behind the scenes. At first we thought, let's just try this. A lot of competitions are going online now. Everything's online. School is online, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought we'll try something, but we have to make it very, very professional and dot our I's, cross our T's, because we've seen a lot of the competitions out there. My wife and I, we've both been on the professional circuit for a long time. We've both done international piano competitions before. We know what it's like out there, and how confusing it can be, and how even the most fair competitions can seem unfair, and there are always accusations of that. So given that, we wanted to make, the most airtight, fair, competition that we could, and have everything that we could. So we thought, okay, what's going to make this viable? And we figured, okay, if we can get 5 people per category, we had 3 categories to separate by age: a junior, a senior, and a young artist. And the young artist was, 18 to 25. The senior was 14 to 18, and the junior was 8 to 14-ish. And so you had to, your birthday had to fit within those parameters. But if we could get 5, maybe 10 per category, we're going to be viable. We got some donations to help out. One of the board members was very generous to help with some of the prize money. And we wanted to offer some real opportunities, some real prize money, not just, okay, you're going to get a certificate and we're going to send you, a picture in the mail. You're going to win a little bit of money. You're going to win a scholarship. All the winners got scholarships to API, a full scholarship. And if they want to use it, of course, many were out of state, so they choose, not to use it, or whatever. So we really gave, and also feedback. We wanted to give feedback back on everybody's performance, not just the winners. So that was
that's quite a lot for the judges.
Yeah. And so at the beginning, we kind of got a few judges together, some from our board internally, and some, outside people that we know and respect, and know that they can do a great job for sort of the preliminary, and thought, okay, we'll have a finals panel of pretty big names, actually very big names. And so we put it together thinking, okay, we'll get 5, 10, 15 kids to sign up for this and see how it goes. Well, at the beginning, we published it well in advance, and we got about 10 to 12 people, and thought, okay, maybe this isn't going to work. It might not be viable. And then a couple more trickled in. Like, okay, we got to this threshold where we thought, okay, we're going to actually do this thing. So good thing we've got all the forms ready, and things are going smoothly. And then we started getting emails and interests, and people were looking at it. And we looked at some of the what are they called when you have the metrics on Google, and you can trace, you can track who's looking at it from where. People were looking at it in Russia. People were looking at it in Asia, different countries, like all over the world. But of course, a lot in the States, because there's a North American wide competition. So Canada and the US, and a few in Mexico as well, were looking at it. And then we just started getting more and more hits, and people were taking a look. We sent a big email out to, a lot of teachers, and then the applications started trickling in more and more. And then they got 20, 30, up to like 40 or 50 about a month before the competition. And then I started thinking like, oh, this is kind of more than we thought we'd get. I don't know if we can handle this many. 50 is a lot of people to handle for a competition. Well, then 2 weeks before, we got a couple more. And usually like the week or two before is when you get the most. So we were thinking, if we've already got this, I don't know what it was, 40, 50, 60, a couple weeks before, next week we're going to get hit with a slew of applicants. And we did. And we got up to, some applicants sent their application in, 1 or 2 minutes before the deadline. It was 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds or whatever on a certain date. I don't remember. And I think we got maybe 9 or 10 the last day. And I think we got 2 or 3 within the last hour of the application deadline, where it's like, wow, that just barely made the cutoff. And in the end, we got 130 applicants, which was just way too many to handle for the original panel that we thought, and that I had organized. So I was scrambling to get basically 3 panels for the preliminaries, and then they would listen to their category and select I forgot how many would go to the final, 8 or 10, pianists that would go to the finals. And then the final panel would listen to the 3 categories overall and kind of choose from those finalists, so that at least we'd have one pair of ears listening to all of the categories. But that was a ton to put together 4 judging panels, have meetings on Zoom with all of them and go over the criteria. And, they were only given a number of a participant or a contestant.
Right. So it was kind of a blind.
Yeah, it was, I mean, they could see the video, but
Right.
we were very explicit, and the logistics behind the scenes of policing and chasing down, telling somebody who applied, well, you didn't quite follow this rule because it's explicitly states that you've got to label your YouTube video such and such a way, make it private, and also make it so that there's no identifying information. People would put on like Matt Smith channel, and it was Matt Smith playing. It's like, okay, we don't want to know that because maybe one of the judges knows Matt Smith,
right?
Yeah, I mean, they might know them by looking at them, but we wanted to make it as fair as possible, have no identifying information. So a lot of the little details behind the scenes, I learned a lot in that year, and Jessica and I were up, all night for about a month to run this thing. And I think over the course of the 2 weeks prior and about the 2 weeks after, when I met with the judges and we discussed and deliberated for the final results, it took about 2 weeks to do all that. In that month, I think I received and or responded to about 2,000 emails.
Insane.
With the competition. Yeah. So 1 month, 2,000 emails with that. And I'd love to do it again. We'll see if we can. It was a great experience. And it's wonderful to kind of meet with everybody and see their perspective. Of course, I couldn't say anything. I was just the supervisor when we would have the judges meetings, and maybe I would lead the discussion or ask for a tiebreaker or make a tiebreaker decision if that came to it. But luckily, things were quite smooth, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. So hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, well, hopefully, and what's cool about that is because of technology, not just to avoid the pandemic, issues, but I think
in general,
longer term, having the, increasing the scope of API and having it become kind of a more of a known quantity is a really cool thing that you guys were able to pull off, and I'm excited about the future and what that holds.
Me too. Yeah,
very cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about judging and things like that. But what about, tell me about your Albuquerque Piano Festival?
Yeah, so. Yeah, it's great. I can go on down a rabbit hole here with the competition stuff, and we'll come back. But so my festival, I started in 2015, I believe. It's called Southwest Piano Festival, and there's a website. We'll put it on, we can link it to this, swpianofestival.org. And I started it because I always came back to my hometown. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, from the age of 3 until, through high school. And I always came back to visit family, and all my mom's family was there, and many of them still are, and to perform. So I'd usually come home winter break for three weeks or so, and I'd come home in the summer, and I would perform a couple concerts here and there. When my grandma moved to a retirement home when I was in, probably during my master's, I would perform at her retirement home. Things like that. When I moved her into a retirement home as well, an assisted living, I played there for a few times. And then I'd kind of make the assisted living retirement home circuit. I do the concert circuit there and get a few concerts in during the winter season and summer season. So anyway, one day I just thought, maybe it'd be nice to do more of a professional thing and have an actual event so that everybody knows every year there's going to be something around this time. So I asked a friend of mine who's a pianist composer. His name is Colin Martin. And I first met him actually because he and I studied with the same piano teacher, although many years apart. And when I was coming back during my master's degree to give master classes, I contacted my former teacher, Mary Beth Gunning, and said, do you have any students that could play for me in a master class? And she said, yeah, actually I do. This kid who he was a kid at the time. I think he was 14, and he played Fantasy Impromptu for me. And in the master class. And it was very nerve wracking because I had also studied that piece with my teacher, with Mary Beth Gunning, when I was 14 years old. And here he was playing it for me at 14 and she was there. So I thought,
wow.
what should I say? It was actually a lot of fun and a very successful class. And then she loved it. He loved it. I loved it. And so she kind of said, when you come back to town, every year, I think you should give him a lesson. And it kind of grew into, he was a student and then got older and went to college and I mentored him a little bit, gave him some ideas. And then he basically became a friend of mine and has remained a friend ever since. And now is going to help me really promote and put together Southwest Piano Festival, SPF. So anyway, that's a short story, I guess, behind Colin Martin. And he's gone off as a composer, and he's now done very well. He's had 2 world premieres with the New Mexico Philharmonic, among many other accolades.
Wow! So
he and I decided let's just put something together in 2015. We'll just do one concert at a church where I used to play, and we'll just we won't charge tickets or anything like that. We won't sell tickets. I want it to be free, but people can give donations as they see fit. And we'll buy some food so anyway, it was a very low key, small event. And we actually made a couple $100, split it. And it was nice, to actually get paid to put on a recital. Right. So that was a lot of fun. And then I thought we should do this again. And so the following year, 2016, I thought, let's expand it and try to get more of the community involved, maybe some younger pianists from the community. So I was already in my mid-20s. I thought maybe some UNM students, I knew some of the faculty at UNM and maybe some high school up-and-coming students. So I contacted a few folks. And there's also a very well-known, at least locally, a well-known competition that's now, I think, in its 30th year. It's called the Jackie McGeehee Young Artist Competition, and it's for strings and piano. And that's been going on since I was in middle school.
Okay.
And they have a winner every year that plays with the New Mexico Phil. And I thought, why don't we try to coordinate with them and kind of join forces, and maybe the winner or previous winners can play in my festival, so that they kind of get another performance opportunity as part of their prize. So I've started that to give them a more of a performance platform. And so anyway, it grew from one concert the first year to 2 concerts the second year, featuring 3 different pianists, including and myself. And we had to change venues. And then we went to the third year, 3 concerts, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, still keeping it free. My mission was always to offer free concerts of great classical piano music to the New Mexico public, free of charge. So anybody can come. And now it's being hosted at the New Mexico School of Music. It's been there the last 4 festivals, basically, and I hope we'll be there for many years to come. I basically legacy. Put on a 3-evening festival, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights. Friday is one of the winners from the Jackie McGeehee, and one maybe up-and-coming high school or college-age student, something like that. So, or maybe 2. So we have 2 to 3 performers. Oh, and then my friend started a chamber festival there. So one or 2 of the groups from the chamber festival will play. Saturday night is always an invited guest artist who is sort of a bigger name, who already has a concert career nationally. And then Sunday, Jessica and I play as a duo, and it's worked out very well. So this year we put on our 6th. It was the first time in 3 years that we've ever been able to present it. And I was very happy. The turnout wasn't the best, because I think we're still getting in the post-pandemic mindset. It was tough. Right. Just on the wrong weekend, but it's getting back up, and I'm now applying to be a nonprofit, which is a huge process and an expensive process.
That is that's a serious endeavor in itself.
Yeah. So putting all that together, and it's a ton of fun. I mean, again, the behind the scenes and creating the program and getting everybody to send me their bios on time, and hunting them down like, hey, you didn't send me this, and all the emails back and forth. That can be a little bit difficult, but
right.
At the end of the day, we get a really nice program and great recitals, and it's just so much fun.
And it does. For me, because it does, I know how when you're in the weeds of putting on a recital or putting on a show or getting ready for something, that you can get in the weeds, and it can get so frustrating and so you just know you're in the weeds, and you also know like somehow magically it's going to come together, and it's going to be it's both going to be exactly what you wanted and nothing like you wanted at the same time.
I didn't plan this at all, but this is exactly what I wanted.
Right. No, it's gonna be exactly right. It's funny how that works. At least in my experience, that's how it tends to work out. It's like, this is not what I exactly planned on, but it's exactly right.
Yeah. It's often worked out that way. It's so interesting. And every year I learn something new, and I think, oh yeah, I have to make sure I do that next year and do this next year and be on top of that. It's a huge learning experience every year, which is great because I can just add to my toolkit. Right. And if I apply for anything that has that, it will help. But yeah, it's great. And I think it gives a really good platform to some of these kids who might not have had a professional, they've played in studio class, they've done some other things, but this is a professional concert venue and they're playing for that. So it's a great opportunity.
It's a big deal. That's a big deal. So, all right. So so as somebody who, I never really did the piano. That's not true. I did some piano competitions when I was young. But I past, middle school, high school, I didn't do that.
Sure.
But as somebody who did, yourself, both performed, has been a judge, has now organized judges and organized competitions. I wanted to talk about performances as pertaining to a competition, because to me that's a different thing than a performance that's geared towards a recital. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I wish it wasn't in a way, but I think it just often is. Yeah, I would agree.
And I think, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Okay. So I'm going to use a non-musical example. Maybe this makes sense. I remember this was, 20 years ago. They first started doing ice dancing in the Olympics, and
I remember that.
And that was it was kind of like the hot thing. Everyone was really excited, and it was exciting to watch because the dancers, it was different. It was couples dancing, and they had to be touching all the time.
Yeah, different rules, right?
Yeah, and they were doing these amazing moves, and somehow at that, I think they changed the rules at one point, but during that time they'd all end up on the ground sliding across the ice. It was just crazy stuff. And it was really exciting, and I remember, and I wish I could remember the couples and more importantly the couples, but I wish I could also remember the teams. But I think it was the United States and Canada. It could have been France. Canada was involved somewhere in here.
Okay.
Cool. I remember that. But there was two couples that were vying for the gold medal, and and I was really excited about this one couple because they were kind of flamboyant. They wore these really beautiful outfits that were kind of flowing, and they would do these big aerials, and I think they were the ones that ended up on the ground a lot, like they were dying, and it was just really
that terrifies me because I can barely get up on two skates with a big padded coat and feel my way around the rink.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just but it was just so exciting to watch. And then there was this other couple, I think this was the Canadian couple, but they were very technical and so precise, and you could tell they were very good. They were doing a lot of the same moves, but they weren't as flamboyant. They didn't smile as much. There was a difference in the performance. And I remember this specifically because I was rooting for the flamboyant team. I think that was the Americans. I just thought they were so cool. And then I judged, and I think that was the consensus of the
public, probably
of the public watching. And I thought this was a wise move. A judge got on a teleprompter and said, "I want to show you guys something." And he took these, and they were doing some sort of a jump
or something.
Yeah, it was a jump of some sort or some sort of aerial. And he said, look at this. And
they were the
actually,
same aerial or something.
They were the same aerial. And he said, look at the difference. This is what this should look like. And this is the angle they're supposed to take, and watch what this group does and how they make up for it with their flamboyance. And then look at this other couple and how precise and perfect and just technically accurate they are.
Yeah.
And it changed my whole mindset in an instant. I went, whoa, that is amazing, because now I get it. Now I know why that couple not only is better than the other couple, but is really exciting to see them do the things that they do. Even though just literally 30 seconds earlier, I thought they were boring, and I was like, oh, and it just
so interesting.
It changed everything for me. And so I feel a little bit the same way when it comes to, like, not necessarily competition, but great playing, great artistry, great piano playing specifically, because and I think that, and so when I say, like, there's a difference between the competition pianist or playing in a competition and playing for a recital, in some ways it can be, not always, but it can sometimes be like that difference between the flamboyant for the public versus the technical perfection kind of thing. And I don't mean perfection as like mechanical, but I mean more like the artistic perfection, like everything is precise.
Like, what is that though? It's hard to pin that.
It really is.
Yeah.
And
you bring up a lot of points. Yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe you can shed a little insight on what that means.
Yeah. Well, each of the things you brought up, it's actually, gosh, now I can't even remember all of it. We'll try to get through some, but there are certain words and definitions of things that I don't even know if there's really a consensus. And I struggle with it all the time, by the way. It's not like I have the answer to this stuff. These are the things that come up in juries and when we're deliberating, and you know, what do we look for? Who's looking for what? What are we prioritizing? And what does it mean to be technical when you say that? Even that's tough, because when we say technique let's say in ice skating, it might be this person did perfect 3 rotations and came down at the right angle on this foot, and, you know, didn't wobble, and whatever little things that ice skaters will know. But then within that, like what does even artistic mean? Does it mean just throwing your hands up in the air all the time? And is being flamboyant artistic? Sometimes, you know, maybe sometimes it isn't. And there are different types of artistry. It's very hard to define that, because that can be subjective too. It's like, what's beautiful? Beauty is very subjective. So,
well, I think, by the way, and I think you're right, but I also think there are some subjective or objective things that we can pinpoint, you know, and I think there's more, if we can understand those things better, then we can talk about the subjectiveness of it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And, I think that's a fun kind of exercise to do. And, I guess what I'm looking for, what I'm listening to in different competitions. First, I'll say there's a caveat that a lot of competitions out there, all these big name judges and pianists that you hear, they always lament how competitions are just producing robots, you know, and I think that's what you're getting at, that competition playing is different from recital playing. Some bigger competitions, I think, are trying to combat this a couple ways. One is to give a freer range of repertoire, so you can do what you feel is best for you. And also giving longer times, more recitals, instead of just you come in and play these 3 imposed pieces or whatever. So you get a little bit more of that recital feel. Like, you know, Van Cliburn will do something like that, where you've got 2 or 3 recitals.
But how much harder is that to judge them?
But it's also very hard, because then you have a ton of different repertoire. Now, there are some pieces that rear their heads, ugly or not ugly, many times. And there are certain pieces that are played, you know, umpteen times, and then some pieces that are played maybe only once by a competitor who thought, I'm going to try this piece, which is maybe a little bit outside the normal realm. Sometimes it's very successful to, you know, and good to do that. But those competitions can be very successful, and some of the big name pianists that judge them, you know, they might be on the same page. They might disagree. Oftentimes they really vehemently disagree. And there have been some competitions in the past where a famous person will actually leave or quit the jury because they're in such disagreement with what the choice was made. And I think the most famous instance of that is probably the Chopin competition in 1980, where Ivo Pogorelic was one of the competitors, and he was maybe 21 or 20, I don't know, very early 20s, I think, at the time. And Martha Argerich was on the jury. I think she was the head of the jury. But it was the panel of jury members was legendary, and she's still legendary. She's 80 and still performing all over the world incredibly. Yeah. So she was on the competition jury, and somehow Pogorelic didn't make it through to the final round or something. I don't know where he got eliminated, maybe in the semifinal round. And she kind of thought that this is the next great artist of the world, of the generation, in the 70s and 80s. And she said, well, what are we listening for? Kind of that he's amazing, and he didn't even make it through. So I quit. She quit the jury, and subsequently he developed a huge career from that fiasco. But fortunately or unfortunately, so the winner of that competition was a wonderful pianist, Vietnamese pianist, Dong Tai Son, whom I know quite well. He was he taught at my alma mater. Okay. And I got to know him and hear him many times. He's an amazing pianist, and very deserving winner that year. And I think even Pogorelic at his height, if you compare them, they're both world-class musicians. And luckily, Dong Tai Son has gone on to develop quite a name and quite a career himself. And Pogorelic has too, although recent years he's kind of gone off the deep end, in my opinion. He's doing some very strange things, but he's still extremely capable. So that happens. That happens at competitions.
And is that usually to simplify it, like a stylistic thing? In other words, let's say somebody is playing a specific piece that is known to be played in a certain way, and they decided to go off the rails and play it quite differently than what is expected. Now, there could be something said for how well you play it is how well you play it in a conventional manner, and another perspective would be, well, that's a very different, that's such a unique take on it that I have to acknowledge the brilliance of the playing.
That's a hard thing. That's a very difficult needle to thread, if you will, because interpretation is very personal, but by the same token, there are certain objective parameters or things in the score that you can say, okay, they're following that, or they're not following that, or they're following that within reason. But I always come back to, there's a performance of Zimmermann that I heard. I think he's one of the greatest pianists ever. And I heard him in concert in Baltimore in the early 2000s. And he played a Beethoven sonata. I mean, everybody knows Beethoven sonatas. And he played one of the most famous, Opus 13, Pathétique. We all played that, when we were probably in middle school, high school. And I heard it. I haven't heard it live that many times. I mean, I've heard it live. I've heard it in student recitals, but the full sonata, I hadn't heard it by concert pianists that many times. So I heard him play it, and he took the repeat all the way back to the beginning. For those of you that know it, there's an opening section, grave, and it's a couple minutes long, and then you get into this allegro section, which is the main theme, and there's a repeat sign. And usually people repeat back to that. Well, he repeated to the very beginning and did the grave section. And I thought this was very weird. I thought when he did it, he couldn't have had a memory slip, not the great Zimmermann. But for a split second, I thought, did he have a memory slip? But anyway, he went back to the beginning and he played the grave differently, more just as great. But it was interesting to hear the differences. And it was just his artistic choice. And after about a split second where I thought, this is weird, this is wrong, I started to think, wow, this is actually what is supposed to be done. And this is not only great, but it's like it's meant to be this way. And so everybody's been doing it wrong. That's how he convinced me. And I think if we can have that open mind, he also played in that concert. Yeah, he played a Chopin Fourth Ballade, and I've heard his recording many times, and I've seen it on YouTube, and it's great. Yeah. It's maybe one of the best. And he played it better in concert. So if you've heard the one online, it doesn't match up to what I think he can do in concert. and it was so powerful. Everything he did, I thought that's exactly how it's supposed to go. It was just an amazing experience to be immersed in that. And so if I can get into that mindset when I listen to somebody and give them a little leeway, within some reason, and I think I'm fairly reasonable as a jury member, to allow them some personal flavor or color on something, I'm willing to give that. I think a lot of big names say they're willing to give that, but then their judging record doesn't always match up. I think a lot of big competitions in the past have chosen safe people, or people, they always say the person that offends the least number of jury members will win. And so it's somebody that, plays extremely well. Look, at these big competitions like Clyburn.
Oh, you're not going to have missed notes.
I mean, and even if you do, it's so rare. And
right.
Things are getting so much cleaner because of this recording day and age. And now all the big competitions are broadcast. They're online. You can follow them in real time. They're streamed on their own channel, and other people are streaming and reacting to them on their channels. It's pretty crazy. And that's a lot of pressure to know that you're not just playing in a closed recital hall for a jury member and for some jury and audience. You're playing for millions of people around the world.
Which, by the way, is exciting in its own right, because if you have, I think about, like, in a kind of a layman's way, if you think about the American Idol competitions that they did, in some ways, you almost wanted to be like the people's choice that didn't make it to the top 10, because if you were outside the top 10, you didn't have to sacrifice a record deal to Simon, but you were guaranteed like a big deal because you were like the people's choice. So if you can split like, you didn't want to win necessarily because then you were like locked in for the next 10 years with Simon. But if you could just like split the needle of not winning, but being like the guy that everybody loves.
Yeah. Well, there was sort of, in some competitions, I don't know how apocryphal it was, but this first place curse, and a lot of second prize winners went on to have bigger careers than first prize winners. So, I think there's something to that. I don't know what it is, if it's a psychological thing or, it's a, I don't know, or somebody gets second place and gets a chip on their shoulder kind of a thing. But I don't think it's so much the case anymore, or at least in the big competitions, all of the prize winners are getting contracts and are getting concerts set up for them and are developing some sort of career. If I think of the Clyburn, the last 5 or 6, I mean, some of the, like one of the third prize winners from a few competitions back, I know him well. He's taught a masterclass for us before. His name is Sean Chen. He teaches at UMKC. Wonderful human being, wonderful pianist. I think he got third prize 2 Clyburns ago. And they're every 5 years, so about 10 years ago, or 4 or 5 years. And in any case, he's developed quite a career. And, he didn't win. But he at that level, if you're one of the top 3 in that competition, you're going to have a career.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're gonna so how does I mean, this is kind of a curious question. How does kind of off the subject, not off the subject, but a little different maybe. How does one start to get noticed and start to enter into these competitions? At what point do you get to try out for the Clyburn or how does that work?
So there are age limit restrictions. I don't know if you mean how do you develop as a young pianist to get ready for these? That's one question.
Well, I guess the question is, the first question is how do you get noticed in order to even consider yourself yes, I want to do that?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's so much get noticed. Look, all the people that are in the Clyburn have won previous competitions at some point. Although the low age for entry is 18, and it turns out this year was quite a feat because they had the youngest winner and he was 18.
Oh, wow.
And he hadn't been in many competitions. In fact, this is, I think his first competition was 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a junior competition because he was 14, and he got second or third prize. I think it was at Cleveland. and then he did a couple. He's from Korea, South Korea, so he's Yun Chun Lim, wonderful pianist. And then he just like burst onto the world scene. I mean, he's going to have an enormous career. And after hearing him, I heard all his rounds at this year's Clyburn. I didn't hear all the competition this year. A few years ago, I heard like almost every competitor and followed it, but I just don't have the time. But I heard all his rounds, and he has the staying power, and he was a very deserving winner. He's 18, and yeah, it's just phenomenal. So I don't know if he didn't really win a lot of things to get up to that, but he knew he was good. His teacher is also a well-known pianist, a wonderful Korean pianist. And so he said, yeah, you're ready to do this. And, he has all the repertoire. There's an immense amount of repertoire you have to prepare. That's the other thing. There aren't many people that can prepare 4 or 5 hours of repertoire at such a high level for these competitions. But it is true that you do have a pre-screening round for these. And I actually applied to the Clyburn many years ago, and the first round was just an application with the resume and letters. They don't even hear you play.
Okay.
And so I sent my resume, and at the time I didn't have enough international experience for competitions under my belt. I had a couple prizes in some international competitions, but they weren't first, and they weren't big enough to be considered to go to the round where they would hear me play. So I could have been phenomenal at that point, although realistically, I wasn't at the level of those that got in. I'll be honest, but I wasn't even given that opportunity because there are 300 or 400 out of us that applied, and they only went to the regional rounds with 150, 200, and then they cut those to 30, and those are the only people that anybody hears because they go to Fort Worth and compete. So you're cutting down from 400-ish to 30. And then, half of those are eliminated in the first round, and then half of those are eliminated in the second round. You get 6 finalists and 3 prizes. So it's pretty brutal.
That it is brutal. And there's got to be, the competition has just got to be so high
it's extremely high. And there are so many competitions today, these days, many more than there were in certainly like the teachers I've studied with, their generation and their teachers' generation. There just weren't as many. And if you were in a competition back then and you did well, almost any prize, you were kind of guaranteed a career for a while. And nowadays, some of these performers have won multiple prizes and still go on to the next competition or try to win one of the big 3, Tchaikovsky, Chopin, or Clyburn, because then you're set. But, they might win. There are some previous winners of the Cleveland competition, which used to be called the Casa de Sioux, and they've gone on to the Clyburn competition. It's like, you already won Cleveland, it's so big, but
it's not big enough. I want more.
Yeah. And sometimes they've done very well at Clyburn. There's, I think one of the great pianists right now, living pianists, is Antonio Pombabaldi, and he won Cleveland in the, I want to say 90s. And then he went into the Clyburn and got second prize in the Clyburn, but he was certainly one of the favorites, and he has a great career now, and he's just a phenomenal, very humble, also musician.
You are listening to And If Love Remains.